One way to establish rigor in the classroom is to utilize timed reading. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Top Tier Teachers. I'm Lisa, and I want to share a strategy that helps me keep students on their toes. If you take a look at this timed reading chart, this optimal silent reading rate, if you Google optimal rates for silent reading, you'll come up with this. You'll be led to this page. And as you see here, it suggests where students should be per grade level. Well, I'm going to use the example of set from a seventh grade text from Study Sync. And I'm going to use the first story, for example, Ricky Tikki Tavi. So here are the steps, and then I'm going to show you how that translates. If your students are not IEP, they don't, are 504, they're not dyslexic, or they don't need extended time. If you're in a first grade classroom, you should be holding your students accountable for reading on a first grade level. If you're in a 12th grade classroom, your students should be held for accountable for reading on a 12th grade level. If you're on a sixth grade classroom, your students should be reading 185 words per minute. And I do this at the start of the year. A lot of times I've seen teachers, if they're reading a story, they just allow students the entire class period to read a story. That does not establish rigor. And so, in order to establish rigor, I like to include timed reading. It isn't a problem because students should be reading on that level anyway. And if they are not, hopefully their parents have already put an IEP or 504 in place for them. So I will, for the first draft reading, as you know, there are multiple drafts to reading. First draft is for comprehension. Second draft, you begin to take a look at analysis. And I learned this from Kelly Gallagher. You're looking at analysis. And then, like the third draft reading, you're analyzing the author's intent. So there are multiple drafts for reading. But that first reading, it needs to be timed. This also helps support students for the SAT. The SAT is a time test. I'll do another video on that at another time. But this is helping to prepare students for the amount of reading they're going to do in college. It helps to prepare students to be successful on the SAT. For the SAT literature, students have to be able to read 700 word passages in 65 minutes and answer 52 questions. That leaves 1.25 minutes to answer each question. Well, where is the time to read the passages? If we have failed to prepare students for timed reading, they will not be in the top tier of SAT results. Okay, so one of the ways I help make sure my students are prepared, I don't care if they're in the sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade, is I introduce them to timed reading, because any student who is going to college must take the SAT, and the SAT is timed, and they have to analyze the passages, not just read it. So they have to be able to analyze quickly and read and answer the questions. So I feel as if I would be doing my students a disservice if I'm not timing them. So let's take a look at, so I just gave you the why. So let's take a look at the what and the how. So how, first you take your story. Okay, if you can take any text. If you have your students, if they're reading a class novel, I did this when I was teaching 11th grade and my students were reading Their Eyes Were Watching God. I would, let's say I need, how long is it going to take them to read chapter 1? So the first thing that you do is you count the number of pages in the chapter, then you count the number of lines on the longest line, and then you count the longest lines on the page, the number of lines on the page, then you count the number of words on a line. Excuse me. So for in Ricky Tikki Tavi, for example, in the study sync text for seventh grade, there are 12 pages, 39 lines on the average on the longest line, and counting across, there are about 13 words per line. So in order to find out how many words on the page, you take the line by words, that gives you 507. To find out next, well, how many words in this text, so you take the number of words on the page, and you divide that, you multiply that by the number of pages. So in Ricky Tikki Tavi, seventh grade study sync student text, there are 6,000 words, approximately 6,100 words. Well, what does that have to do with the silent reading rates? Since you are planning your lessons, you want to know, how much time do I need to give my students to read this text and hold them accountable for comprehension? So the sun is coming down, and so it's, I hope that isn't bothering anyone, but it feels really good on my skin. So then I take the number of words in the text divided by the seventh grade level. So looking at the seventh grade level, 195 words per minute, and that gives us 31 minutes. Now, there's no way I would require seventh graders to sit and read for 31 minutes, not at the beginning of the year anyway. So what I'll do is I said, okay, wait, if there are 507 words on the page, divided by what seventh graders should be able to read, then I'm going to see how many minutes does it require them to read per page. So it takes them about 2.5 minutes per page. I would take this 31 minutes and I would divide it over 3 days. I would require my seventh graders to read Ricky Tikki Tavi in 3 increments. And because it is a first draft reading, they read for 10. So what is that? They read those pages. They read about 5 pages. Okay. They read another 5 pages or so. And let's take a reading comprehension check. So the whole purpose of the timed reading is immediate, since it's the first draft, no analysis, immediately after the reading, there needs to be a comprehension check. There needs to be a quiz. This is a way you can boost rigor in your classroom. There is no reason why students are not being timed. They should not have all class period to read something that takes 10 minutes. If we were to actually do the math, and I do the math for every text. I don't care if I'm teaching sixth grade, 11th grade, ninth grade, seventh grade. I use this chart religiously. Okay. Now, there are some students, I remember my own children, when they were in the sixth grade, they were already reading on a college level. So this isn't going to be a problem for them. I don't adjust it and say, oh, wow, you read a lot of books. You're reading on a college level. No, it just means you're going to pass the comprehension quiz. And the comprehension quiz shouldn't be weighted heavily. You want to hurry up and get the reading out the way so that you can do the fun part, which is analysis and discussion. John Hattie talks about the power of return on investment for class discussions. Okay, so there's that. You can also, after you have the students read it once, you can jigsaw it. We'll talk more about all those activities later. I'm getting ahead of myself. The purpose of this video was to talk to you about how I use time reading to promote rigor in my language arts classroom. I hope this was helpful. If you need more support or you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Thank you.